Hotep world. This your brother Matthew Daniels, aka Pooh, aka the Chosen Few, aka the real bookworm. I'm not a bookworm, I'm the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And as always, world, may your name live on forever and may your memory never die. Hotep, cheers to that. Today we got a real special video. I got a real special video for you guys today. We're going to be talking about, I know you saw the title, the fountain of youth, right? Being found in the land of Ethiopia. Now, what we're going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at Herodotus. Any of you guys that watch my videos, you know that Herodotus is one of my favorites. Now, for those of you who don't know, Herodotus is frequently called the father of history. Now, there were individuals who wrote historical accounts thousands of years before Herodotus, but he is known as the father of history. Now, Herodotus is a Greek historian who lived from around 484 to 425 BCE. That is around 2,500 years ago, between 2,400 to 2,500 years ago. Now, inside of Herodotus, book 3, we get an account of one of the earliest references to what one may call the fountain of youth. Now, when Herodotus talks about this fountain of youth being found in the land of Ethiopia, this fountain of youth is not a fountain of youth, as you guys are going to see, that allows an individual to live forever, right? But it is a body of water which is accredited with allowing the individuals in Ethiopia to live longer than the individuals during that time period in surrounding areas, and even longer than the average individual lives right now today. Now, what Herodotus tells us in book 3, and we're actually going to look at it, and I'm going to read it to you guys, but what he's talking about is a time period in history when the Persian king Cambyses was on his war campaigns to conquer much of the then known world. And after Cambyses, the Persian king, conquers Egypt, he decides that he wants to conquer other lands. One of these other lands that he decides that he wants to conquer is Ethiopia. And so he sends spies into the land of Ethiopia to basically gather intelligence about the area so that he can formulate a battle plan to send his armies into Ethiopia and conquer it. So we're going to be coming out of Herodotus, book 3, and we're going to be looking at one of the earliest accounts of the fountain of youth. Now, we're going to, let's start right here. Now, I'm going to be reading a little bit of it just to give you guys some context, right? So, Herodotus writes in book 3, after this, Cambyses planned 3 campaigns, one against the Carthaginians, another against the Ammonians, and the third against the long-lived Ethiopians living in Libya at the southern sea. Now, Libya, to Herodotus, was not the Libya that we know of today. They actually reference the majority of the African continent as Libya. So when he's talking about Libya, he's talking about Africa. So he's actually talking about the Ethiopia that is south of Egypt. And when he's talking about the southern sea, let me just give you guys some context. That's why I love this book here, because it actually comes with maps. I want you guys to see this map on top, right? Now you see this area right here next to what is he's calling the Erythraean Sea. Some people call it the Red Sea. It's close by the Red Sea or whatever. But he's talking about the land next to that. So you can see that this Ethiopia is in fact the general Ethiopia that we know of today, right? And so Herodotus goes on to say, after careful deliberation, he resolved to divide. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Just a second. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, I'm about to watch a video. I apologize for that. But he goes on to say, after careful deliberation, he resolved to divide his forces, sending his navy against the Carthaginians and dividing his land troops, sending some of them against the Ammonians. To the Ethiopians, he would first send spies, allegedly for the sole purpose of bearing gifts for their king, but whose true mission was to observe everything they could and to determine whether the so-called Table of the Sun really did exist in the land of these Ethiopians. So we see, like I told you in the beginning, he's contemplating 3 more campaigns after he's conquered the land of Egypt, right? And so he's talking about conquering the Carthaginians to the west of Egypt, the land of Carthage. He's talking about sending his troops into the land of the Ammonians, also to the west of Egypt, right? So he's trying to move out westerly in Africa and conquer those lands. And he also wants to go south of Egypt into the land of the Ethiopians. But since he doesn't know too much about the Ethiopians, he first decides to send spies into the land of Ethiopia so that he can gather intel. And we're going to see that from this intel, we get one of the earliest accounts of the fountain of youth. So he goes on to say the Table of the Sun, which is said to exist in the land of Ethiopia. The Table of the Sun is said to be something like this. There is a meadow which lies at the approach to the town, filled with boiled meat from every kind of 4-footed animal. During the night, the current magistrates of the town procure the meat and set it in this meadow. And during the day, anyone who wishes may come there to feast on it. The local inhabitants, however, claim that it is the earth itself which gives forth the meat on each occasion it appears. Such is the description that is given of the Table of the Sun. Once Cambyses decided to send the spies, he immediately sent for the fish eaters from Elephantine who knew the Ethiopian language. So the fish eaters of Elephantine is near Aswan in Egypt. And so there were a group of individuals that the Greeks called the fish eaters. They were Egyptians who primarily subsisted on a fish diet. A lot of Egyptians ate fish because they lived along the Nile River. So of course they would eat a lot of things that came from the Nile. And so he used these Egyptians that he's calling the fish eaters to be spies in the Ethiopian land because they knew the language. Of course, if Ethiopia is right next to Egypt, and it has been for thousands of years, then they would already have trade and communications and networks amongst themselves, so they understood each other's languages, and they also looked the same. So he decided to send these fish eaters from Elephantine in Egypt and use them as spies. Remember, he has already conquered the land of Egypt, so he is utilizing his resources in the conquered land of Egypt to spy on the Ethiopians. He goes on to say, when his men had set out to go after the fish eaters, he ordered his navy to sail against Carthage. But the Phoenicians refused to do so, for they said they were bound by solemn oaths and would commit no impiety by fighting the sons of their own people. So when he decided to send the fish eaters of Egypt, of Elephantine, to Ethiopia, he also decided to send his navy against the Carthaginians. But the navy of Cambyses was primarily made up of Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians, they did not fight against Cambyses. They decided to become allies and work with him. But the Phoenicians are said to be the ancestors of the Carthaginians. It is said that Carthage was founded by Phoenicians who migrated to that area. So the Phoenicians told Cambyses, basically they were not going to fight against the Carthaginians because they were their sons. They knew that these people had descended from them. And so I'm not going to read it all, but Herodotus goes on to relate that since Cambyses was pretty much wholly dependent upon the Phoenicians for his naval forces, he didn't really get mad that they said that they didn't want to fight the Carthaginians, and they weren't going to fight the Carthaginians, and he didn't try to force them to fight the Carthaginians, because for one, they willingly became his ally, and for two, he needed them. Without them, he had no navy. Okay, so we're going to skip down. Okay, so he says, after the fish eaters had come from Elephantine and met with Cambyses, he sent them to the Ethiopians with instructions about what they should say, and he gave them gifts to take there: a purple cloak, a necklace of twisted gold, bracelets, an alabaster pot of perfume, and a jar of Phoenician date palm wine. The Ethiopians, to whom Cambyses sent these gifts, are reputed to be the tallest and most beautiful of all peoples. It is also said that their laws and customs are different and completely unlike those of anyone else, particularly in respect to their kingship, for they select the tallest of their men who possesses strength to match his size to reign as their king. So Cambyses send these spies in as if they are trying to form an alliance with Ethiopia. And he gives them gifts: a purple cloak, a twisted gold necklace, bracelets, and wine, right? And so he sends them with these gifts so that these spies can go in and say, hey, look, Ethiopians, we are presenting you with these gifts because the king of Persia, King Cambyses, wants to be allies with you. But that was all a ploy and a trick. They were only using those gifts to get access into the land so that they could spy. When the fish eaters arrived in Ethiopia, they presented the gifts to the king with these words: Cambyses, king of the Persians, wishes to become your friend and ally, and has sent us here with orders to talk with you and present to you these gifts, which are the things he himself enjoys most. The Ethiopian, realizing that they had come as spies, replied, you are not telling the truth. The king of Persia did not send you here bearing gifts because he puts great value on becoming my ally. You have really come to spy on my kingdom, and he must be an unjust man. If he were just, he would not have set his heart on a country other than his own, nor would he be trying to force people who have not harmed him at all into slavery. So as soon as these fish eaters from Egypt got into Ethiopia and presented the gifts and said what Cambyses told them to say, the Ethiopians automatically knew, you're lying. Cambyses does not want to be an ally. He is using this as a ploy. And he is an unjust man, because a just man would not be seeking to go into areas where he has not been harmed or challenged or attacked and try to subject them into slavery. The Ethiopians weren't stupid, right? They weren't idiots. It was already apparent because, like I said, Cambyses had already conquered Egypt, and Cambyses had already been on war campaigns all over that region. So they knew that Cambyses was a warring king. He was a conquering king. And so they understood he doesn't want to be our ally. He wants to conquer. So immediately when the Egyptian fish eaters got there, they exposed them. They said, we already know that Cambyses doesn't want to be our ally. We know that he is a conqueror and he is an unjust man. But the Ethiopians, you're going to see, they were warriors. They were soldiers. They didn't play no games. And even though they understood this, they weren't worried about this. And you're going to see how they, even knowing that they were spies in the land, they understood that Cambyses could not conquer them, so they weren't worried about him. So they went on to show them things in their land, and we are going to see one of the things that they saw was the fountain of youth. But in any case, this is what the Ethiopian says to the fish eaters, the spies. But in any case, give him this bow and repeat to him these words. The king of the Ethiopians offers this advice to the king of the Persians. Whenever Persians can draw a bow as large as this one, as effortlessly as I can, then do make war on the long-lived Ethiopians with your superior numbers. But until then, thank the gods for not directing the minds of the sons of Ethiopians toward the acquisition of land other than their own. Remember, we already understood that the kings of the Ethiopians were picked because they were the tallest and the strongest and the most warlike. So they told them, we know you're spies. And so the king had his people present the spies with the bow of the king, the bow made for a large, powerful man. And he told them, tell the king of Persia, tell Cambyses, when he can draw a bow as large as this, as easily as I can, the king of Ethiopia, then he should come and make war with us. Basically saying, if he cannot even draw the bow of the king of the Ethiopians. If he cannot even draw the bow as easily as we can, it would be foolish for him to come into the land of Ethiopia, because he will be slaughtered. And he say, and until then, until he can draw the bow as large as this and as easily as the king of Ethiopia, right? He should thank the gods that they have not put it in the minds of the sons of the Ethiopians to invade other lands. So basically he told them, mind your own business, stay out of Ethiopia, and you need to be thanking the gods that the Ethiopians don't want to come to conquer the Persian land. Because if the Ethiopians wanted to come and conquer the Persian lands, there is nothing that you could do to stop us. And so then Herodotus, he goes on to tell how the Ethiopians and the king, they was like, but at any rate, what are these gifts? What did you bring? And so he shows them the purple cloak. He shows them the purple cloak, and the Ethiopians ask, well, how was this made? They inquire, how was this made? What was it made out of? And so the spies, they explain the process. How did they make it? The dyes that they use? Where did they get the purple from? Blah, blah, blah. And so they basically mock the cloak. Yeah, it's fake and it's fraud as the King Cambyses. Matter of fact, I want to read so you can see how the Ethiopians responded and made a jest of all of these gifts, right? They disrespected all of the gifts except for the wine. They said that they had good wine, but remember, the wine was Phoenician wine, right? So the wine was the only thing that was good that came from the Persians, but the wine was Phoenician wine anyway. So he says, after saying this, he released the bow and gave it to the men who had come to him. Then, picking up the purple cloak, this is the king of Ethiopia, picking up the purple cloak. Then, picking up the purple cloak, he asked what it was and how it had been made. The fish eaters told him the truth, explaining the purple dye and the dyeing process. And he responded by saying that these people were deceitful and so were their cloaks. Next, he asked about the gold, the twisted necklace, and the bracelets. As the fish eaters described these items as jewelry, the king burst out laughing. He had thought they were shackles, and he told them that among his people, shackles were stronger than these. Third, he asked about the perfume. When they had reported to him how it was manufactured and used for ointment, he gave the same comment he had given about the cloak. But when he came to the wine and learned how it was made, he found great delight in the drink and asked what the king ate and what was the longest lifespan of a Persian man. So after he disregarded, the cloak is nonsense. The necklace, the jewelry is nonsense. The perfume is trash. And the wine, the only thing that was good, that the Ethiopian said was good, was the wine. And the wine was Phoenician wine. So then the king asked them, basically, how long do Persians live? Like, how long do you guys even live? Like, what's the longest lifespan of the Persians? The life expectancy, right? And what do you guys eat? What is your diet? They said he ate bread, related how wheat was grown, and set 80 years as the longest lifespan of a man. To this, the Ethiopian replied that it was no wonder why they survived only a few years if they subsisted on manure, and they would not even be able to live that long if they did not restore themselves with the drink. And so basically the spies tell him that the Persians, the oldest life expectancy is around 80 years. If you make it to 80, you've lived a ripe old age. You lived a long life. And he told them what they ate, the wheat and bread, etc. And so the Ethiopians responded by basically saying that's not old at all. And it's no wonder that you don't live that long because you eat manure. And what he was saying about the manure is because when they explained the process of how they grew their wheat, right? They fertilized the soil with manure, poop. Okay, and so the Ethiopians said that it's no wonder why you don't live that long, because you're eating. I don't want to use the word, but you're eating crap, you're eating poop, you're eating doo-doo, because that's what you're fertilizing the soil with. And really, you wouldn't even live to be 80 years old if you didn't have this drink that you're drinking. Again, the drink that comes from the Phoenicians. So he's saying that you wouldn't even live that long. So you got a poor diet, you got poor health, you're eating manure, You know, and he's basically just mocking him like, bro, you really don't want to come in Ethiopia with that nonsense. You know, it's not, it wouldn't end well for you. So the Ethiopian king he's being very arrogant. Well, not only arrogant, but he's very confident that, bro, you don't want to come to Ethiopia with that nonsense. You know, you come to Ethiopia with that nonsense, it's over for you. And you need to be thanking the gods that the Ethiopians don't come to you. Thank the gods for that. Quick side note, in Homer, right? Homer, who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, the Greek historian, one of the most famous Greek historians. Um, um, well, they say that Herodotus is the father of history, so they call him an author or the poet Homer. They saying that he wasn't really writing history, he was writing tales, right? The Iliad and the Odyssey. Now, even though there is, well, I don't want to get sidetracked, but Homer mentions that the gods lived in Ethiopia and that the gods often feasted in Ethiopia. So even the Greeks had a high level of respect for the Ethiopians. So it was something about the Ethiopians that I may go into a later video, that the Ethiopians were a highly revered people, even in ancient times, and they were always associated with the gods, even the gods of the Greeks. They said that the Greeks came from the land of Ethiopia, right? And that they often went to the land of Ethiopia to have their feast. Okay, and so he goes on to say, and as he made this remark to the fish eaters, he pointed to the wine. For at least in this one respect, he admitted that his own people were inferior to the Persians. So the only way that the Ethiopians were saying that they were inferior to the Persians and what they possessed was the wine, which again, I've already said it and I'm going to keep saying it. The wine came from the Phoenicians. He goes on to say, the fish eaters in turn then asked the king about the lifespan and diet in his country. Now we're going to get to the fountain of youth. The fish eaters in turn then asked the king about the lifespan and diet in his country. And he told them that most of his people lived to the age of 120 years, and some even surpassed this age. Their food, he said, was boiled meat, and their drink was milk. When the spies expressed amazement at this lifespan, he, the king, led them to a spring in which they bathed and became smoother and sleeker, just as though it consisted of olive oil, and it smelled as though it consisted of violets. The spies said that the liquid of this spring was so light that there was nothing that could float on top of it, neither wood nor anything lighter than wood. Indeed, everything sank down to its depths. This liquid, if it truly is anything like it is described, would be the chief reason that the people who use it are so long lived. Leaving the spring, he led them to the men's prison, where the prisoners were all bound in shackles made of gold. For to these Ethiopians, the rarest and most highly valued metal of all is copper. After observing the prison, the spies also viewed the so-called table of the sun. So we see that the king led these spies to a spring. Now, this spring was consistent of water that seemed to be of like the consistency of like olive oil, and it smelled like violet. It had a nice aroma to it. And the Ethiopians would bathe, they would dip themselves into this water, and when they came out, they would appear shiny and sleek. And they are saying that this water was so light, the density, I guess, of the water was so light that nothing would float in it. Right? Anything you put in it, it will automatically sink all the way to the bottom, because any item that you placed on it would be heavier than the water itself, and so it would automatically sink. And then Herodotus is saying, he is telling us that it is because of this spring being able to dip their bodies into this spring is one of the reasons, also associated with their diet, that allowed them to live like an extra 40 years compared to the life expectancy of the Persians. Okay, and the thing I find interesting about that is the majority of the times when you hear stories about the fountain of youth, right? People talk about it as if you have this water, you drink of this water, you bathe in this water, you dip in this water. Something about this water can give you immortality. Now, as soon as it's associated with immortality, it automatically gets placed into the realm of legend and myth, right? And made up fanciful tales and stories. We know that no one can live forever. No one can live 500, 600, 700 years. People just don't live that long. But when you're talking about people living to 120, and the Ethiopian said a lot of people even live longer than that, 130, 140, 150. That is a little more in the realm of possible and possibility, which makes, in my mind, the account of this spring more plausible, because it's more in the realm of reality. Now, I can't explain the physics or the science behind how a spring and that diet could actually enable them to live 120 years, and I'm not presenting this as a scientific explanation of how this could actually work. I'm just sharing with you guys one of the earliest accounts of the Fountain of Youth, and I'm expressing in my mind, the plausibility of such a spring actually being there, and this spring being associated with what they say that this spring was associated with. Now, the story goes on to say that when the fish eaters of Elementine, the Egyptians, when the spies got back to Cambyses, they basically told Cambyses everything that the king of Ethiopia had said. He became enraged, and he was like, oh, he disrespected me. They threatened me. Basically told him I need to be thanking the gods that the Ethiopians don't come and conquer me. And since Cambyses was a warrior, he immediately set out to go wage war with the Ethiopians. But he didn't think things through. He didn't provide enough provisions for his army, and they immediately began to set out. So what happened was they immediately they ran out of food before they made it to Ethiopia, right? When they ran out of food, they began to eat the pack animals. The pack animals were the ones who carried the provisions, carried the weapons, carried the things that that the army needs, right? Because when you're talking about armies back in those days, everything was on foot. They had to travel miles and miles and miles, so they needed like tents, food, weapons. So they had pack animals to carry these things. So when they ran out of food, they consumed their pack animals, and they kept going. Now, at this point, Cambyses should have realized that he didn't have this thing planned out, and he should have went back. But he was so enraged by the disrespect that the Ethiopians showed him that, he kept going. So it got to the point that when the food from the pack animals, eating the pack animals, ran out, they began to the army tried to subsist by eating grass and plants and things that they came across on their journey. But when they hit the desert, right? They now they ran out of foliage and grass to eat, to sustain themselves. So what did they do next? They chose one man out of every group of 10, and they cannibalized them. So when the men started cannibalizing each other, Cambyses was like, oh, wait a minute. This thing has gotten out of control. We can't be cannibalizing our own army. And they retreated, and they never actually made it to Ethiopia to wage war with them and to conquer them. But that is the story of the Fountain of Youth being found in Ethiopia. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys heard something. As always, I hope you guys heard something that you never heard before. If you heard something that you have heard before, I hope I was able to give more clarity to it. And again, that was found in Herodotus' work, The Histories, book number 3. The Fountain of Youth, one of the earliest accounts of the Fountain of Youth, is found in Ethiopia, in Africa. So leave a comment, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. And until next time, this your brother Matthew Daniels, aka Pooh, aka the Chosen Few, aka the Real Bookworm. I'm not a bookworm, world. I'm the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And as always, may your name live on forever, and may your memory never die. Hotel, cheers to that. I'm out. Now, if you'll indulge me briefly for a slight commercial break, as you all know, if you've been following me, I'm an author. And if this is your first time watching one of my videos, now you know I'm an author. And I would appreciate you guys' support. I want you guys to go to Amazon.com. I want you to type in Suicide Note by Matthew Daniels. Suicide Note by Matthew Daniels and order my novel, right? Also type in on Amazon, Thicker Than Water by Matthew Daniels. Type in Thicker Than Water by Matthew Daniels, and I want you to order this novel as well. If you're not into paperback books, okay, if you're not into paperback books, you can also order the ebook version of both of my novels. So go to Amazon.com, order your copy today. You won't regret.